This video expands on the previous one, so if you haven't watched the face rig tutorial, please do so first. In this video, I'll be demonstrating how to use the Channel Chimp face assembly with a fully rigged character. So let's begin by loading the Monkey ACS Modo scene. The information in this video still applies if you choose to create your own character rigs, but in this case, the character has been rigged using the Automatic Character Setup, or ACS for short, kit. Now the reason I chose to use ACS for this character is that it's an excellent rig that's very popular and widely used by Modo artists. So back in Modo, you can see that the character has the full ACS rigging applied. And I want to call your attention to a couple of things before we proceed. Now, first of all, I'm in the Setup tab of Modo. And over here in the sidebar, we're going to go to the Mesh Ops tab. Now, in order to see all the deformers, we need to deselect this filter option, which is filtering to single item view. So when I deselect that, you can now see that there's this monkey normalizing folder. Now, if you created your own character, for example, if we go to deformers and then there's bind at the top, when you bind a character using a skeleton that you've created, it'll also create one of these normalizing folders by default, which is what we also see with this ACS character. And when I open it, you can see that the folder contains all of the different joints that comprise the rig. So next, let's come back into the Items tab. And down here you can see the monkey character folder. This is the standard hierarchy that ACS creates. And to find our meshes, we're going to open up the bind meshes. And here's our monkey body. And if I come down to the lists and morph maps, you can see it's got all of the face morphs as described in the previous video. They've already been created for the character. And if we expand the monkey rigid meshes, this is where the two eyes live. And this is the standard way of rigging eyes in ACS, is you attach them as rigid meshes. So we have our monkey eye right and monkey eye left. And again, they have the corresponding morph maps to make the pupils contract and dilate. Now, just an addendum to the previous video that you don't actually have to create all the morphs that are shown in the instructions. If you leave some out, it just means that the controls over on your device in the web browser won't respond if it doesn't have a corresponding morph, but you don't have to create every single morph for your character if you don't want to. So our next step is, let's go to Channel Chimp and we'll say File, Open, and we'll load up the face web chimp file. So now this will send all of our control messages for the face rig. And next, we have to drag and drop in our Channel Chimp face assembly preset file. I'm just going to drop it onto the item list. And there you can see now we've loaded our Channel Chimp face assembly. So just like in the previous video, we need to select our three meshes. So I'm going to select the monkey body, then I'm going to hold down Control and click the monkey eye right and the monkey eye left. So I have all three selected. And then in the web browser of your smartphone, tablet, or you could even use your desktop browser, we're going to select the face rig. And then we'll go to the help, which is this question mark icon at the top right, and we'll choose Setup Face. So down here at the monkey's feet, I want to call your attention to something. We've got this yellow disc, and above it you can see that it says Channel Chimp Face. So this is the main control for the Channel Chimp face assembly. And we're going to want to attach it to this character so that as the character moves around the scene, that control will go along with it. So what I can do is just select the control, and then we'll move it somewhere. You could even leave it at his feet if you want, but I'm just going to move it up maybe, I don't know, let's move it up beside his head. And then down here in the properties for that control, there's a radius, so I could adjust that to make the disc a little less obvious if I want. All right, and next we're going to hold the Shift key and select this ring down at the feet, which is the master control for ACS. And with that selected, we'll go to the Modifiers tab and choose Add Parent. So that's going to parent our channel chimp face control to the master control of the ACS rig. And what that means is if I choose this bottom ring, and now as I move the ACS character around, for example, when the character's walking around in the scene, that channel chimp face control is going to go along for the ride. Okay. Next, let's go over to the Mesh Ops tab. And now you can see that there's all these different morph deformers that have been added by the channel chimp face assembly. And if we scroll right to the bottom, there's our monkey normalizing folder that I showed you previously, and that's why I called it out. So what we're going to do is we're going to select that and hold and drag to move it up in the deformer stack. And I'm just going to drop it right at the very top. So I have the normalizing folder at the top, and then all of the morphs go below it. So what's going to happen is we want our morphs to all take place with the character at his rest pose. And then the monkey normalizing folder will take over and move the character through the scene. And this is because in Modo, deformers are evaluated from bottom up the stack to the top. So the ones at the bottom go first, and then Modo keeps evaluating, going up, up, up the stack. So this normalizing folder is going to be the last thing. I'll show you a little practical example just so you can visualize this better. I'll grab the master control and we'll move the character and we'll rotate him a bit. Let me deselect that deformer. And I guess we'll make him crouch down, maybe. Move his head down and to the side. So there we go, we've deformed his body. We've moved him around in the scene. And now if we go back into the deformer stack, if I disable visibility, you can see he jumps back to his T-pose position. So over here on the tablet, if I say go to the mouth, and I'll just lock the left and right, and if I make him smile, you can see his smile happening there, or I can open and close his mouth. So there's the morphs being evaluated while the character is in its rest pose, which ensures that those morphs work correctly and don't get distorted. And then when the normalizing folder occurs, so I'm going to re-enable the normalizing folder, you can see the whole body takes over and moves that character with the morphs that have already taken place to its new position. And that means that we get a nice, clean morph and expression on the face using Modo's order of operations. Next, let's take a closer look at the eye controls. So I'm just going to zoom in on his face here. And you'll see there's this little rectangle. It's this small rectangle right against the face. In ACS, if I select that, that gives us our eye controls. So we can say unfold the eye controls. I'll select that. And that opens up these other controls out here. So when I grab this control now and move it, it controls where the eyes are looking. So I can rotate the eyes by using this. Okay, so that's all right. But you could always use the face rig instead if you just want to rotate the eyes. But where this comes in particularly handy, and what I use a lot, is if we select this little yellow ring, which shows us our additional options for control in ACS, you'll see that there's this one that says pin aim control to head. So I'm going to bring that down to 0%, basically disable that. And now what's going to happen is wherever we position this control in space is where the monkey is going to try to look. So, if I put it here, let's say that was a character he was talking to, I can put that there. And watch as I rotate his head. You'll see his eyes keep, get in a little bit closer so we can see. As I move the head up and down, see how he keeps trying to look at that target, the eye controls, right? So even as he turns his head, he'll keep looking. And that's really useful because if you have a character that's walking into a scene, for example, you don't want them to be, their gaze to be bouncing around as they walk. You might want them to look at a specific point and keep looking at it, which is more natural for how people move. Now the cool part is that Channel Chimp's facial controls work in addition as another layer to these controls. For example, if we come over to the eyes, I'll just lock the left and right, you can see that I can now rotate the eyes in addition to whatever they're doing controlled by the ACS rig, right? So, you know, if let's move the head a little bit more in Modo. There's the eyes peering out sort of out of the side. And then if I come over here onto the face rig, I can further tweak it. And what's cool with this is you could have your main controls, for example, under here, under ACS, and then just add little quick motions, the saccades and fixations, the little darting eye movements that make a character seem more alive. You could do those just using Channel Chimp, you know, and you could even create a performance to create some of those little movements. Another neat thing is if we select the Channel Chimp face control up here, you'll see that we have a few options. And one of them is that we can blend the eye rotation. So let me do something extreme. I'll move the eyes right up in the Channel Chimp control on the iPad. And then if I blend this out to 0, it means it's no influence from Channel Chimp. And as I go back to 100, that's full influence. So this allows you to blend, for example, from whatever ACS is doing to Channel Chimp. And this is an animatable property. But what I really like is you can actually set this to a fairly low amount. And that means that the movements that I make over here will be much more subtle. You can see that as I blend out, like let's go down to maybe, you know, even something like 10%. Now I can make big motions over here on the tablet, and it results in very tiny motions. So that allows, again, to do those little saccades and fixations and yet have a lot of motion that we can use over here to add those. Whereas if we were up here, you know, at 100, and I moved fully like that, the eyes would roll right around. Another feature to take note is we actually have rotational limits. So we can, for example, control how far the eye can roll in any given direction. For example, let's roll this up. And if we say, oh, that's going too far into his head, you can reduce the maximum amount of roll in that direction just by dragging here on the eye's rotation upper limit. So I could say, well, that's as high up as I want them to go. And now as I move that up, it limits it. Same thing if I go down and I say, oh, well, that's way too much, then I can just reduce this down limit and bring it into something that, you know, I want it to be. Now, bearing in mind, you probably want to set these limits while the character's standing at its T-pose, because what we're seeing here is the addition of whatever ACS is doing with the eye controls.